Welcome back. This is episode 222 of the Veterinary Business video show. In this episode we'll learn the importance of the four components in the strategic planning process and hear about the need to be sensitive to the way we communicate with other people. We'll hear some advice about being diligent but not desperate. We'll learn one way to rejuvenate the practice culture, and I'll offer you my quick business tip for this episode. I'm John Sheridan and this is the video show from Veterinary Business. I get the impression sometimes when talking to practice owners that they regard strategy as the starting point for a business plan, and that once it's been defined, all the other components can be put in place, the plan can be initiated, and attention to strategy can be put on the back burner. The problem, of course, is that leading a business from the here and now to wherever we want to get to in 3 to 5 years' time is never a straight line. And it's usually necessary to review every component of the plan, including the overall direction, because that's what we mean by strategy, on a regular basis. Here's a clip in which Erica Olson explains the importance of the four components in the strategic planning process.
Hi, my name is Erica Olson with On Strategy. Today's whiteboard session is What is Strategic Planning Really? And I wanted to do this whiteboard session because oftentimes we debate the merits of strategic planning and what it really is or isn't. And I've found that's a no-win discussion. What really matters is, what does the strategic planning process need to do for your organization now? And one way to think about that is, what's different as a result of the strategic planning process 12 months from now than what you're seeing today in your business? And so with that in mind, there's a lot of different ways you might answer that question, and I'm going to give you some ideas about that. But before I sort of jump into this, I want to say there's no right answer, there's just the right fit. And it matters that everybody on your executive team or your board or whomever the decision makers are in your organization, that you all agree on, yep, this is the outcome from the process and this is what strategic planning means to us at this place in this time. So let's jump in. The very first thing that it would mean is having an articulated plan. And an articulated plan is very simply, where are we going and why, right? So that's the first place to start when you think about a strategic planning process, is simply having a strategic plan that gives you focus. If you want the strategic plan to actually be strategic, you need to kind of take it out to the next level of expression of the process, which is actually adding in an understanding of your differentiation. What are we best at? Where are we going to play? How are we going to win? That is the strategy around strategic planning, right? So when, where, and best. In order to do that, that means you need to do the research from a competitive perspective, a market perspective, a customer perspective to answer those questions. Taking it out even further, the next expression of it is, we have a plan that's strategic that we actually want to align our organization around, right? And that answers the question, what's important right now and who must do what? And what that actually looks like is taking the big ideas in your strategic plan, those things that you're focusing on, those big priorities, and breaking them down through the organization. And while everybody wants organizational alignment, and we certainly want to say everyone has accountability and ownership in the plan and the process, taking that one step at a time is really important. So perhaps you answer this question by saying maybe this year you're going to get organizational alignment to a certain level in your organization, and then maybe next year you take it all the way. So that's maybe something to think about. So we have a plan that's strategic, that our organization is aligned around. And if we actually want to take that even further and experience organizational transformation, we need to put a process around managing the plan, right? So that it doesn't just sit on the shelf. And so that answers the question, are we making progress and do we need to adapt the strategy, right? So this is the agility part of having a strategic plan, and that's really the big complaint people have about strategic planning is that it's static. This makes it dynamic. And how do you make this happen? You put a rhythm in place, a monthly review process to talk about progress against plan and making adaptations and feeding that through the organization.
Now let's see who's on the video show Soapbox. I remember once listening to a presentation about communication between a practice and its clients, between members of the staff, and between any two individuals in the business. The theme was the importance of words and how careful we have to be sometimes to ensure that the meaning of the words we use in conversation, and which are very clear to the speaker, are not interpreted quite differently by the listener. In short, we have to be sensitive to the impact which the words we use may have on the person we're talking to. Here's a clip in which Deirdre Gelderman reminds us that it's not only words that can have that effect, and even the seating arrangements for a conversation between two individuals, for example, can make one of them feel disadvantaged.
What I want to talk about today is communication breakdown and one of the ways in which it can happen. And what I'm going to talk about may really shock you because it has to do with chair heights. Yeah, that's right. When you have a meeting with a colleague, a team member, a client, a customer, and the chair heights are unequal. Now, whether that's a one-on-one meeting or whether that's a group meeting around a boardroom table or a consulting table or something like that, if the chair heights are unequal, there will be a huge decrease in communication outcome because that person on the lower chair height is going to feel inferior and threatened by the person that's on the higher chair height, and will therefore, and I'll use an Australian idiom here, get their back up to some degree and be less willing to communicate openly and end up with an equitable solution. So the chair heights may not deliberately be different, but even if they are accidentally different, the same thing applies. And I see much of that happening where you've got a boss or an owner sitting on a chair on one side of a desk and someone else sitting on a comfortable armchair on the other side of the desk. And typically those chair heights will be lower. That's a big no-no. It will really impede the conversation. So if you can't change those chair heights, then may I suggest that in the corner of your office that you have two comfortable armchairs that are equal height.
Now for a tip from the top in the business world of veterinary practice. Today's tip from the top is from Joel Parker, and it's for all of those of you who are finding it difficult to recruit staff for your practice. Joel suggests that the problem may be that only 1 in 10 applicants at best is likely to be a match for the person you're looking for, and that the individual you need is probably already working for somebody else.
This week I want to talk to you about getting into your human resource section on hiring people and finding DVMs and technicians and receptionists and all this kind of stuff. By the way, here we are. This does not change every year. Every year we hear hundreds of people saying, I've got a special situation over here. I can't find anybody. There's no DVMs that want to work here. I've got a special situation. There's no techs or anything like that. And you know what, guys? Here, I totally hear you, but here's what you've got to understand is that you've not yet reached the correct estimation of effort to be finding people who are good to work in your practice. Fact number 1, only about 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 people are suitable to work in your practice if you are creating an in-it-to-win-it, Super Bowl winning game type of practice. If you are creating a practice that is a stellar practice, that it will perform above and beyond the average practice out there, you cannot do that and expect performance with the 9 out of 10 people out there who are really not that good. You need the 1 out of 10s. You need those A players. You need those rock stars that come in. So where are they? They're working for somebody else. They're not typically responding to a Craigslist ad or some ad in your local paper and so forth. So you've got to always be looking for people. So here's the thing, guys. You have to be diligent. You have to be constantly diligent on looking for good people. They, like you, exist out there. They are. But again, they're working for somebody else. So you don't want to be desperate. You've got to be diligent. And now I'm going to wrap up here and show you some tips on how to do that. Number 1, ABH, always be hiring. Just because you hired a new DVM this week does not mean they're going to last longer than a month or 6 months. You don't know that. Just because you hired the best technician you've ever run across that's going to rock the back end of your practice, you don't know whether she's going to last longer than a month or 2 months. You just don't know. So do not stop hiring. So always be hiring. Secondly, carry your business cards. When you're traveling and going through Wendy's drives-in, McDonald's drive-thrus, wherever you are, Home Depot stores, wherever that may be, you're going to run into some very, very good people. And I want you to give your card to them and say, listen, I've really enjoyed working with you today. Thank you for your help. If you've ever considered working at a veterinary practice, then please consider coming and working for me. You may find that they will keep that card for 6 months or even a year, and then finally they're going to show up on your front desk. Another one is to have a sign on your front desk that says, hey, if you are a positive people person in brackets who loves pets too, please apply. It doesn't mean you're hiring, but you're always applying. And guys, I found some of my best front-end staff were clients. In fact, not some of them, I would say 100% of the best front-end staff that I ever hired in my 17 years of practice came from my client base. And they were people that came back to the practice year after year after year. And finally, guys, just contact lots of people wherever you go, whether that's the high school basketball game with your son or daughter, the ballet class, wherever it is, you're carrying your business cards, and you're always, always, always looking for great people. Okay, guys, that's one of the biggest shortcomings I find with almost every practice we work with, is that they are not diligent enough with finding good people. They think that they can just put an ad in the paper and people are going to show up. You know, it used to be that way maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but now with the economy doing so well, people who are great are working for somebody else. So always be hiring, be diligent, carry business cards, and someone will eventually grace your practice who you can hire.
Now for my quick business tip for this episode. Today's tip is about practice meetings. How often do you hold them? Who's included? Is attendance voluntary or compulsory? During the working day or out of hours? Do they work? Or what do they achieve? These are just some of the questions which pop up when practice owners or managers get together to discuss the issue of practice meetings. Here's a clip from Tracy Dowdy which may help.
So it's really important to have weekly meetings in my book. I think that communication needs to be open, transparent, inclusive, and rapid in any business. And I think that because we work in such a fragmented industry and veterinary practices don't really have a roadmap of how to effectively run their practice, train their team effectively, when they meet once a week for 2 to 3 hours, they can spend that time working on their business versus in their business, sharing knowledge, setting standards, developing systems, and empowering the team further. And so this is an opportunity to rejuvenate the culture and to create a very open line of communication. And I will tell you that I've been in practices that have embraced this idea of having weekly meetings, and you do have to structure them in a way that makes them effective and productive. You're going to take that kind of time out of your busy work schedule to have a meeting. You need to have an agenda typed up. You need to have a facilitator who knows how to facilitate a meeting and build collaboration and build consensus and get everyone involved in the discussion. You got to have a secretary who takes notes so that there's documentation of decisions and pertinent discussions that happen in those meetings. And you also have to have an agenda that focuses on serving clients and patients at the highest level. And so it's an opportunity to train and to educate your team. If you have a meeting where it's all about the do's and don'ts, don't do this, do that, people are going to go, I don't want to come to a meeting. You know, that's frustrating. So it's really got to be a meeting that people get excited about and are rejuvenated to get back into the workflow and in the trenches and work hard.
So what's my quick business tip? Well, it's this. I firmly believe that regular meetings involving every member of the team are one of the essential tools for effective communication in veterinary practice, but only when the objective is clear, when they're carefully planned and effectively chaired, and when all those involved end the meeting with a feeling of good job, well done. Well, that's about it for now. I'm John Sheridan, and this has been another video show from Veterinary Business. See you next time.